I would now like to introduce today's presenter, David Ricard, partner, leads Everest Group's global customer experience management services, sourcing and vendor management for EMEA clients. Chandak Bishwas is a practice director on the business process services team. He assists clients on topics related to customer experience management, including customer experience strategy, service delivery models, market opportunity assessment, and more. And with that, I would like to turn things over to David.
Thank you very much and welcome to today's webinar. What I want to do first of all, we'll just do a little brief introduction just so you get a bit of a sense of our backgrounds and who we are. So Chandak, do you want to just do a very brief introduction so people get a sense of who's talking today?
Sure, thanks David. Hi everyone, this is Chandak Biswas. I'm a practice director at Everest Group and I work with the CXM services here. So my background and experience lies in analyzing the CXM market, understanding the trends and opportunities, as well as tracking different service providers and enterprises that operate in the CXM services space. So I would be one of the co-presenters along with David today.
Brilliant, thanks Chandak. Yeah, and hi everyone, so I'm David Ricard. So I'm a partner here at Everest Group and as the introduction said, I lead our work around customer experience management. I've been with Everest Group 2 years now. Prior to that, though, I'd worked in consulting for 3 years where I led an outsourcing practice for a CX consultancy, working with some global brands. And then prior to that, I'd been on the buyer side. So I spent 17 years at Microsoft as a senior procurement director, and I was responsible for contact center outsourcing. My last role was outsourcing of the consumer business, so about 16,000 agents globally. So I've been on the buyer side, I've been on the consulting side, and now the analyst side. And the reason that I wanted to mention that is because it has shaped the agenda that we're looking at today. What we wanted to do is to do a broad set of coverage of what's happening in the CX market, especially as we're thinking about the uncertain times that we're all moving into, but cover it from both a buyer perspective. So if you're a buyer of these services or you deliver CX services through an in-house model, or if you're a service provider, we wanted to provide content for both audiences really. So you'll see today that we'll split some of the content between the buyer side and the provider side. But actually, I think it's useful, no matter what side of that table you're sitting on, that actually you get a sense of what the other side are hearing as well. So hopefully it's a good set of content for people to hear today. And what we want to do is just first of all set the scene in terms of the CXM industry and the size of the industry. So as we move on to the next slide, Chandak's going to take us through the size of the industry.
Yeah, so the CXM industry overall is a huge industry, and over the last 7 or 8 odd years, the industry has added more than $60 to $70 billion in terms of revenue as an overall outsource as well as in-house revenues. So right now we expect or we forecast the industry to be more north of $350 billion, including both service providers as well as enterprises in-house centers. The industry had took a little bit of hit when COVID came in which a lot of enterprises were not able to keep the required customer support volumes in place, but the industry has since then bounced back over 2021 and 2022. What we are seeing right now is the service providers, which are largely part of the outsource market, which you can see in the bottom half of this chart in dark blue. This is the market which is slowly eating out the pie from the in-house centers, in which a lot of providers are taking over the work that were traditionally done by the in-house centers. And more enterprises are coming out, understanding the need to control various factors that we will discuss in the next slide, and the importance of how service providers and what service providers can bring to the table. So in this slide, what we see is the outsource market is the one which is fast growing. Before COVID hit us, the market had been growing around 3 to 5% constantly. But after COVID came in, the biggest jump occurred in 2021, in which the market grew by more than 10%. And this is when a lot of enterprises realize the emphasis or the importance of providers to control cost, focus on talent, digital solutions, and have an overall business continuity processes in place and the strategies which will shield them from anything that is coming in the future. Right now in 2022 and 2023, what we see is the growth has not been up to the 2021 mark, but still it's higher than the 2020 or before the COVID period. In 2023, we expect the growth to mute a little bit further, given there are multiple pressures or multiple headwinds in the market, which are compelling enterprises to look at their cost and spend very judiciously. And what we see in the next slide uh, is kind of the same. A lot of macroeconomics, as well as financial factors indicate that the recession, a potential recession might be coming in the future. And 2023 is the month in which, 2023 is the year in which a lot of firms expect the recession to come in. And we see a lot of layoffs happening, particularly in the technology industry, in which a number of people are being laid off by these companies just to be ready for anything which is coming up in the future. And this is where we expect the service providers also come in, but enterprises looking at their spend very closely and only spending on the most important things to come. And there are multiple factors important for enterprises. And David, can you cover this one around what's important for them?
Yeah, so as we go to the next slide, what we'll see is that actually, so the importance of CX is always been there, but I think we're seeing definitely in the last few years that actually the importance of CX is reaching board level, and companies are realizing and enterprises are realizing that actually now is the time to invest. Even though we've been investing for many years, actually now, even though it's uncertain economic times, now is the time to get ahead of the game and to actually really invest in delivering an exceptional customer experience. And there's a number of reasons for that, really. The first one is around we do know that buyers are now making decisions, and these are the end consumers, so customers of enterprises. They are making buying decisions based on the level of service that they're getting. So they're not necessarily looking always at lowest cost, although that does factor in. But they're also looking at, well, how good is the experience I'm getting? And we know a lot of the banks have stepped up their game from a CX perspective, some of the insurers, as they're being disrupted by some of the new organizations who are coming in and differentiating themselves around the CX that they can deliver. And therefore, superior CX will help organizations to avoid price wars, because you're leading with the quality of the service you're delivering. It's not just a race to the bottom at the lowest possible cost. We also know that actually having and listening to your customers enables you to amend and change your business as we approach these uncertain times, to actually get ahead of where customers are going and what they're looking for. So having customer experience not only as a delivery engine, but also a listening engine to what your customers are saying is also seen as key, a key differentiator in a business, but also one of the strategic opportunities that you have from customer experience and delivering great customer experience. Retention, we know that is much cheaper than acquisition. So again, when people are looking at what they're spending their money on, acquiring new customers becomes harder. So delivering a great customer experience will aid retention, which actually makes it much more of a business model. And then once you retain a customer, you can look to grow that relationship as well. And then to maintain overall profitability, that's why businesses are here. But what we see is that actually, again, if you're differentiating on customer experience, you're learning from your customers, you're able to give them what they need in the future by understanding that, but looking to do it in an efficient and effective way. It's not just about throwing money at it. Will also enable that business to be profitable as we do approach these uncertain times. And we talk a lot about the potential recession and tough economic times, and the view on that can change depending who you're talking to. But at the end of the day, regardless of the economic situation, we know that customers' demands are increasing and expectations are increasing all the time. So the focus on CX is the right thing that businesses should be doing. If you're a service provider and you're thinking about what I need to be doing, as we move on to the next slide, when we start thinking about what businesses should be doing or service providers should be doing, then what we know is, and actually if you're a buyer in this audience, you may be quite interested to know what your service providers are thinking about and maybe some of the areas that they're going to be talking to you about. But what we know is that service providers need to be thinking about how do they win some selective deals potentially to really help the businesses now. We hear a lot about captive carve-out opportunities. So maybe there's an opportunity to look at selective outsourcing deals that maybe actually be able to expand at a later date into multi-tower deals. we know that service providers are being challenged in terms of how do you help us drive our efficiency and drive our cost effectiveness. So if there's a service provider, that's a great opportunity to demonstrate the value that you can bring. Because we talk to a lot of service providers. If you know anything about Everest Group, you know we cover the service provider market from the CX perspective to a really granular detail. And it is a really hard market to differentiate yourself in. But we do know clients are looking for that efficiency and that cost effectiveness as well. But we also know there's a growing need to offer flexibility. So businesses aren't stable. We know businesses I've been in this 20 years, as I said in my introduction, and businesses have always struggled to really be able to forecast. But actually offering flexibility when people are worried about where is their business going to go in the future, are we going to grow? Are we going to have to scale back? Having some flexibility in the deals. And when we talk to enterprise customers, we know that they really appreciate flexibility from service providers. So that's going to be a key differentiator for providers as well. Providing the digital push, that's the other area that we know that one of the reasons when we talk about why outsourcing has increased in the last few years, one of the areas was there was a shortage of digital talent, and therefore organizations were looking at where can I get this digital talent? If I can't get it myself, then do I work with a provider who can bring that? So being able to be that impetus to actually move the digital channels, because in the long run, the move to digital channels will be seen as a cost-saving play as we remove some of the more transactional type of interactions, and we can either automate or eliminate, but providers are able to give that level of push. I think diversifying into recession-proof industries, that's something that we're talking to service providers about, thinking about in terms of where are the right verticals to be focusing on, and in terms of safeguarding the business, but also what certain businesses, if they are impacted by the recession, are still going to need support, but they may be looking much more from a cost play. Whereas if they're in a high growth business and less impacted by recession, they may be the ones that are looking to improve the digital experience that they do or the customer experience that they do. So actually there is a part to play in any type of vertical, but maybe the positioning that you have to take is going to have to change. And what we're saying to providers is it's important to avoid being pressured into the wrong deals. So what we should be thinking about if you're on the provider side is what's the right thing for yourself and also your customer. And I don't want to be terribly cliched about the win-win, but actually it's sometimes when you go to having been a buyer for a very large organization with a massive budget, you can sometimes feel you can go and push providers into doing what you need them to do because you've got a big checkbook to back that up. But actually we are seeing the most successful providers are the ones who are actually able to stand pretty firm and actually make sure that the deal works for both sides. Because again, as a buyer, you do know that actually it can be the wrong thing, that you may have a short-term win, but in the long term, being in a position with a provider where the deal doesn't work for them actually will negatively impact you as well. So I think it's just about thinking about what the right deal, and it is all about that relationship. I don't want to use the word partnership because I think that's too overused, but it is about having the right relationship with the providers and the buyers to make sure that you're able to move that forward. And if we move on to the next slide, we want to just do a quick poll. It'd be great to get some people to give us a view there in terms of if you're one of the buyers in the audience, but even if you're a service provider, what are you hearing from your customers? What are the priorities that you're focused on this year to safeguard your customer experience management? So is it adopting more digital tools and technologies? Is it looking at retention? Is it cost savings at all costs? Is it exploring alternative delivery locations? Is it retaining and upskilling your talent? Is it all of the above, or is it none of the above? So it'd be great to get a view of those. And I can see, thank you for those who are participating already. There is quite a lot of actually all of the above, which is interesting because I think that's pretty much what we're hearing is that actually you have to be pretty flexible and adaptable, and you need to be looking at all of the levers that you have possible. I think if we give the poll maybe 5 more seconds, that would be great. So we've had over 65 people participate. So that's great. So maybe if we close the poll there, what we've seen is actually, so all of the above was the predominant answer to what people are doing, which actually I think is really interesting that people are talking about, yeah, we've got to look at all of these things. It's not going to be one thing that fits the narrative that you're looking to achieve or achieve your business objectives. The second highest answer was around customer retention through personalized experiences, which again, I think is really interesting as you think about, well, actually, it is much cheaper to retain than win new customers. And actually, retaining, upskilling talent, adopting more digital tools and technologies, and then cost savings for efficiencies are all there. I think the one that actually probably surprises me, and Chandak, we'll move on to the next slide in a moment, but the one that probably surprised me the most is how many people, only 5% said they're adapting or adopting more digital tools and technologies. Because I think if we had asked before we had done this, I would have bet that actually that probably would have been one of the higher ones. But I'm guessing it's included in all of the above. So some people aren't only relying on digital technologies, which probably makes sense. But maybe we'll move on to some of the opportunities that people can do, or some of the strategies that we're recommending people look at.
Absolutely. So I think the kind of results that we're getting from the poll is exactly what we also think. And it's not about only one lever that an enterprise can pull or a service provider can offer. It's about a holistic set of strategies and actions that needs to be taken in order to be future-proof and be ready for what's coming, maybe a recession or a potential recession in the coming year. So we feel there are 4 broad strategic pillars that an enterprise needs to have in place. First one is obviously the digital CX part of it. It's not just about a point solution or adopting a chatbot or automating a certain set of processes. So digital CX is about having a holistic ecosystem of solutions, which will not just support a customer in their journey, but also have a good backend capability to support agents and companies themselves to provide the strategic direction to their customer experience initiatives. The second one is obviously about reviewing the delivery models, near shore, onshore, offshore locations, which are the kind of service delivery that should be adopted. Is it work from home? Is it hybrid? Is it purely in-house, purely in-center? And the providers that needs to be partnered with in these locations. The third one is about talent, and we have already mentioned about talent because hiring is very costly. Retaining and upskilling the talent is the one which should be the focus for most of the enterprises. And thus talent management is been and is also a very important pillar for now. And the final one is the most important one, obviously, keeping the customers' needs at the forefront, giving them the requisite and quality support that they need, and forging partnerships with different tech providers, service providers, to bring in that prowess to their table in which they can support the customers in a more personalized way. So we will cover all these pillars in different sections throughout this webinar. And the first section, if we move ahead, is the first one around digital CX. So in the next slide, what you will see is digital CX, as I said, is not just about a point solution, but in the next slide, it's about the overall ecosystem of solutions. So what enterprises needs to have is a core cloud contact center platforms as their pillar for customer experience, which would act as a platform for both sides. The agents, which are partly working from home or maybe fully, and agents who are working from center, so that they have the requisite set of technologies to support their interactions with the customers. From a company side, they should have a fixed set of support solutions in which they can get the requisite data supported by consulting, advisory, intelligently routed through their system to the most or the more adaptable skilled agents. And at the same time, provide personalizations and customer data, keep the customer data secure and up and running during the operations. On the front end, although voice constitutes more than 50 to 70% of the interactions right now, but the non-voice channels such as email, chat, social media are fast growing. And most of the companies needs to, before a customer interacts with an agent, most of the companies needs to have a good set of chatbots, conversational AI solutions, IVRs in place, as well as authentication systems in place, so that they ensure the right customers are connecting brands. So it's, like I said, it's not just about having one or two solutions here and there. It's about a total set of ecosystem, which will support a company from the back end as well as the front end. In the next slide, what we see is the outsourcing markets overview. And digital CXM has been the fastest growing component of the outsourcing market. So in last 5-6 years, the pie has been grown, and right now the digital CXM spend on outsourcing providers is more than $10 to $11 billion. And this part of the market is growing 3 times faster than the traditional contact center based services. And there are multiple pillars of the digital CXM markets which are driving the growth. First one is analytics, like I said before. The analytics part, both in terms of reporting and descriptive analysis. Descriptive analytics is growing, but the other one around prescriptive analytics, identifying bottlenecks in operations, process optimization, and whatever customer data can be leveraged and heard to improve operations is growing fast. And this is one of the most high growing segment of the digital CXM market. The other two are automation and AI chatbots. Sometimes these are easy to identify but difficult to implement. But a lot of enterprises are increasingly automating their existing processes and making them more efficient. The final one is CX consulting. We see a lot of new and smaller enterprises coming to the market, leveraging the existing expertise of service providers to understand where are they lacking, what are the bottlenecks in their operation, and what can be done better, as well as the larger enterprises to make their existing processes and customer journey more efficient. And we talk about the CX consulting journey in the next slide. So CX consulting is not just a part of the digital CXM. It's a thing which accompanies all the digital CXM solution. So we see enterprises seeking help from providers and consultants throughout the customer journey to better understand what are their customer needs and preferences, and what is the right technology that they can have in place so that they can support their customers better. It may be in terms of what are the omni-channel strategies, which are the channels in which customers are connecting with the brands. What are the ways in which those customers can remain engaged and do not drop out during the customer journey. What are their feedback if they're dropping out? What are their feedback if they are ending up buying things from the brand? And how this data that can be gathered from the customer journey can loop in again in the process and help improving and making the process more efficient. I think consulting has multiple aspects, and it is helping brands to look at their entire end-to-end customer journey and find the bottlenecks, improve them, and make it profitable for them. And this is something which we are also seeing from the enterprise side. So in the next slide, we talk about what are the things that a certain buyer is looking for from a service provider, and there are multiple aspects of it. I think the most two important, the top two ones, which have very high level of importance for most of the enterprise that we end up talking to, is the robust partnership ecosystem and what are the domain specific advisory capabilities that a provider is bringing to the table. So it is about do the provider has the best in breed partnerships or best in breed solutions that are out there in the market? Can they bring that in the table and help us efficiently implement that at the same time? And is the provider relevant to our industry? Does the provider have requisite expertise in their management and past experiences which can help them navigate any potential challenges that we might face during an technology implementation? I think these are the two things that buyers are increasingly looking at. The next,
Chandak, I would just say quickly, I know you sort of said about the top two. I think that risk mitigation and BCP almost becomes a hygiene factor, and as buyers you expect that from your technology solution provider. So let's not underplay that. I mean, I think the level of importance there is still medium to high, but actually I think that's become much more of a hygiene factor.
Absolutely, totally agree with this, David. And the one more factor that I intended to cover is the modularity of the platform. So a lot of buyers have already invested in their infrastructure, and not a lot of them are looking at an end-to-end solution. So it's about is the service provider capable of implementing in a ready to configure products or a set of point solutions which will make the whole journey complete, or fill the gaps where the current technology solutions do not exist for a buyer. I think and looking at it from multiple perspectives, both the verticals of the buyer and the processes in which the buyer needs to implement is turning out to be very important for most of the CXM buyers out there in the market. Having said that, in the next slide, we have told a lot of things about digital CXM and how this market is fast growing in the CXM space. The future is very bright, and there are multiple things which are shaping up right now. First one is around the personalized experience, and because customer expectations are evolving and they need more quick support, relevant support from them, from the brands. And this is leading to the rise in more focus on personalization, understanding customer personas, and how a certain brand can be more efficient in or capable in supporting a certain set of customers. The next one is the influence of metaverse. I think metaverse has been a discussion point across the CXM industry since last year, and it is constantly growing right now, and multiple brands have actually realized that the future in metaverse is building up, and have made investments either in virtual spaces or NFTs, or maybe establishing virtual stores in which customers can come in and have the look and feel of the product that they are selling. And this is one thing which will keep on growing in the coming years. The next one is the CCaaS solution, and like I mentioned previously in the section, that cloud contact center is at the heart of most of the enterprises right now, and this is leading to the rise in contact center as a service, in which they are preferring the providers to come in and implement the contact center end to end. The final two are focus on security in this world of internet. I think the cyber security has become a very important issue. We see a lot of data breaches and attacks on companies across the world, and in this scenario, having the right security frameworks and methodologies in place, as well as enforcing them, has become a very important factor. And we see a lot of investments across the board for the security solution. The final one and the most interesting one is ChatGPT. We have been hearing a lot about it, although it's still in the nascent stages, and we have to see how it impacts the CXM market. But a couple of use cases have started coming up in which providers are leveraging ChatGPT for agent assist, supporting the agent to quickly scroll through the knowledge base and gather relevant articles or relevant information regarding a query, as well as in the back office processes like hiring a talent, identifying the right talent, addressing queries, doing document processing, or helping them in the finance and accounting processes to a certain extent. So it's still a very interesting proposition for the CXM market, and should be shaping up how the digital CXM is perceived in the coming years.
Thanks, Chandak. So if we move on to the next slide, I've got an offer for the audience, which is, without sounding dreadfully salesy about it, is actually, if like, one of the things that we like to do is to talk to our customers about what's happening in the market. So if you'd like us to have a look at, or have a discussion around what we're seeing in terms of trends in the digital CXM market, some of the key technologies that we're seeing that are being used or in demand, some of the best practices we're seeing in terms of how these technologies are being implemented, and share with you some of our practical use cases that we're seeing, then we'd love to have a discussion with you about that. And that's open to both our enterprise and our service provider audience. If you're already a member of ours, the service provider audience, or our enterprise audience would already have access to a lot of this discussion. But if you want to learn more, want to have a discussion about what you're planning to do with your CX tech, we'd love to hear from you. So our actual email addresses will be at the end of the deck, or there is something that's going to be put up, I think, in the chat that actually you can link to get access to the free offer there. So if you would like to have a chat, please follow up. We'd love to have a chat. We're very happy to talk about digital technologies and how it's impacting the contact center. So you'll get this deck as well. But yeah, please let us know if you'd like to have a conversation. There's a link, as I said, or if not, please contact myself or Chandak directly. Our emails are at the end of this deck. So if we move on to the next section, what we want to do now is have a look at the sort of the delivery models that are being looked at, the providers and locations. So if we move on to the next slide, one of the things that we're seeing is that people are having to think about their shoring mix for a number of reasons, and it's to drive business agility, but also that operational resiliency as well. And so what we're seeing is when people are thinking about, okay, why should I be thinking about my shoring mix? You have to think about a number of factors. So it's around things such as how can you manage that remote workforce and infrastructure? If you want to have a flexible model, we saw that actually during the pandemic, people did a great job getting everybody remote. But actually, if you're thinking about this as a long-term part of your strategy, have you got the ability to manage that workforce and that infrastructure? Secondly, is where's the talent that you're going to need? So we talk a lot about how automation is going to drive out a lot of the simple contacts. We know that actually over time, we're probably going to need more like humans, if you like, that are talking to our customers with the ability to problem solve, higher levels of empathy. So where's that talent going to be in the future? Where have they got the language skills, but also the EQ as well as the IQ, but also the process expertise as well. So thinking about where's the future locations as well. Reducing risk. So we're all about managing risk. We've always been, whether you're in sourcing, whether you're in delivery, it's about how you make sure that you're reducing the risk to the business. So how do you think about your business continuity, your security, privacy, but also the cost to the business of uncontrolled price increases as well. We've then got regulatory pressures, government support, ease of doing business, etc. But we do know that there's, depending on where your customers are, there's different regulations that you have to comply with. So there's a whole host of things you have to think about as you think about your shoring mix. Agility is another one. There is no point finding the perfect location, but then find that actually it doesn't scale where you want to go in the future. If you've got a really aggressive business plan and you're going to double the size of your business, and you may have to increase the size of your support organization, and technology may not allow you to eliminate all of that demand, then actually you need to be somewhere that's scalable. And then lastly is all about the cost. I mean, no one is in CX. We know the good news is that we know that CX is much more focused now by the senior leadership, and it hits the boardroom, but actually no one's got a blank check. So you still have to think about where is the opportunity to drive the cost down whilst delivering the best customer experience. So that's what people are thinking in terms of when they're thinking about their shoring mix. So if we move on to the next slide, it starts to talk, okay, what are people thinking? And when I started outsourcing 15, 20 years ago, it was a fairly binary. Everyone was in a contact center, and you were probably onshore or offshore, and that was probably the options that you had. But what we're seeing is the movement has moved, or it's moved towards much more flexibility being built into the models now. So you can have brick and mortar, you can have hybrid, you can be fully work from home, but you can also have gig workers. And we talk a lot about that in terms of the growth of the gig worker space and how that's really being leveraged more and more to support customers where you need a lot of flexibility in the model, where you may have peaks at odd times of the day or peaks that are only lasting for an hour or two, or where maybe you really need brand advocates as well. And then you have to factor in the use of digital workers and AI-based bots. So you've got the different types of work that can be, or the different types of workers, if you like, but then you also got those different mixes between onshore, nearshore, and offshore, which have been around for a long time. But the types of locations are evolving. But the really important thing is to think about where is going to be the source of talent that I need moving forward, and then what type of workers are going to do the work. And then the chart on the right-hand side really just shows how we've evolved in terms of operating model. Because what you can see is actually that probably prior to the pandemic, and this would just be my guess, but probably less than 5% and probably less than 3% of contact center work was done in a fully work from home model. There were specialist providers there. I've worked with them in the past, but a very small percentage. And obviously through the pandemic, we've seen that that's grown incredibly, and the industry did a great job of enabling that to happen. And as we came out of the pandemic, and this is 2021 numbers, we saw that 41% is still in a fully remote model. We do expect actually that may drop, and in 2022 and beyond, that will level out a little bit, but it's still going to be much, much higher than it was prior to the pandemic. So thinking about whether it's fully remote, whether it's hybrid, whether it's fully in center is also a factor that people have to put into their strategies. They're thinking about how they're going to deliver CX services moving forward. And if we move on to the next slide, as we then start thinking about, okay, where are we going to do it from? We're seeing an emergence of more and more locations. So at Everest Group, we do a lot of focus in terms of outsourced locations and destinations. But what we're having a lot of conversations about right now are some of the newer locations that people are really interested in. So we look at LATAM, lots of new locations, lots of investment from service providers, fairly well-established market for outsourcing, but a lot of growth and a lot of investments being made by service providers in that region. If we look at Africa, Africa's one that we probably have a conversation or two a week about. And it's not just North Africa and South Africa, which have been pretty well prevalent over the last probably 5-10 years in terms of the delivery locations. What we're having many more conversations about now is sub-Saharan Africa. So the likes of Ghana or Kenya or Nigeria, etc., those type of places, because what we know is that people are looking at not necessarily moving wholesale from India or the Philippines, but looking at how you load balance some of that volume for predominantly English speaking, but an element of French, etc. And actually sub-Saharan Africa has been seen as a really interesting place to that be, because it's got a massive youth population that are going to be coming into the workforce very soon, who are going to be the perfect people to be working in contact centers. And for the English speaking world, they're perfect for that. So a lot of focus around Africa right now as a growth location as well. So just some of the factors that people are thinking about as they're thinking about their operating and delivery models, and then locations as we think about where are the right locations from a price perspective, but also from a talent perspective. And I think now we're going to move on to talk about talent and moving on to Chandak, who's going to cover some of the talent management strategies.
Yeah, thanks, David. I think talent is one of that important pillar or a strategy that a company really needs to support their existing or safeguard their existing businesses from the upcoming downturn. So if we move on to the next slide, it's exactly the feeling exactly sees the same. So we recently did a survey in which we asked these providers across the enterprises across the BPS market about what are their top talent priorities. And we see a similar feeling across the board. The first and top two is upskilling their existing talent and focusing on the culture, focusing on the employee experience and giving them the right and positive work environment to work, as well as giving them a view to grow their career in the contact center space. The other three which we see is recruiting new talent, obviously, and a very expensive proposition, but still a lot of focus is on the recruitment as well. And the other ones are adopting different talent models, bringing a mix of the contingent workforce, gig as well as work at home, along with their existing in-center model, and finally leveraging the digital tools and technologies. The interesting fact is digital tools and technologies is not a single standalone thing, and it kind of feeds into all the other factors that we asked, and we will discuss more about this in the next slide. So what we see is digital CXM has been continuously used by different companies across the world for their talent hiring, sourcing the talent from maybe digital campaigns, digital marketing, interviewing the candidates in an online mode, doing background checks, onboarding them, giving them the required training initially, and then supporting them throughout their flow time, training and upskilling them, and keeping them engaged and connected to the broader company. The most important factor is the engagement, and we see most of the investments in agent engagement, because right now in a virtual world, a lot of agents are working from home or working from different location, and it has become important for most of the companies to bind them together and help them realize the value that a company stands for. And we also see a lot of investments in learning and development of these agents across gamification, providing them real-time support through bots. AR, VR is something which is still nascent but growing, helping most of the companies to make their agents feel the product and know how it is used, or what are the exact use cases, so that they can support their customers better. And there is always a self-paced learning training platforms which are being adopted by most of the companies, so that the agents can quickly log into and learn more things, learn more about the brands that they're working with, as well as the companies that they're supporting or customers that they're supporting. Having said that, there are multiple digital solutions which are fast growing, and we believe that these are the solutions which will shape the digital CXM market in terms of talent management investments, which we'll see in the next slide. The first one is about agent assistance, because the kind of volume as that the agents are now handling, as well as the complexity of the queries, is increasing. So implementation of more robust agent assist solutions it has become more and more important for most of the enterprises. The second one is deploying AI-based translation solutions. So traditionally, what we have seen before COVID is there has been a growth of multilingual hubs across multiple countries and across the world. But right now, the dependence of the multilingual hubs is slowly shifting towards translation solutions, in which companies are focusing more on good translation, in which maybe if an agent who just knows English can support customers in multiple languages, say Swedish or Spanish, which get efficiently translated by AI, while the customer is still speaking in their native languages, but the agent who knows just English can support them in multiple languages through different channels. The third one is investing in internal practice bots. So traditionally, what we had seen is the learnings had been self-paced, or maybe through different digital solutions or instructor-led. But right now, due to the complexity being increasing, a lot of focus has been given to how an agent becomes ready for supporting their customers, and what are the different scenarios that they can readily practice, so as to not get surprised when any challenges come in. So these kind of practice bots are increasingly being deployed to help agents learn different scenarios without getting to interact with the actual customer, and performing at the same level when the time comes, or when the challenge comes to their table. So
and Chandak, just something to say on the deploying AI translation solutions. I know we're talking here about talent management, but I think just as a heads up for the audience, and something that Everest Group we're looking very closely at in terms of where is AI translation going. We've recently done a blog on it, a very basic blog, but thinking about, how is it used from a chat and a text-based perspective? But where we're really excited about looking in the future is where it's going to go from a voice perspective, which is very early stages and we're quite a long way. But I mean, that's if we're talking about things that are going to transform the delivery of CX from a management, operational and cost perspective, then when we really get to that position, then we're going to see that AI translation, if it could be done in real-time voice and make it conversational, that would potentially be a game changer for multilingual support. So not directly related to this, but just a heads up, that is definitely a topic that we see exciting for the future.
Yep. Thanks, David. I think on an overall level, it has become more important to train and upskill the existing agents to different solutions, and keeping them engaged and helping them with the required solution to get ready for the actual floor scenario and actual challenges that they would be facing out there when the time comes, and as well as retaining them for a long term, so that you have an agent working years and years and have that brand value ingrained in them. So it's one of those very important strategies. So we will in the next section, we will focus on the overall customer needs, and why if forging a strategic partnership has become important. And in the current state of the world, buyers are facing a lot of challenges, which we see in the next slide. As most of the buyers are facing challenges in providing a consistent support across channels, across geographies, across languages. And most of them have invested a lot on the legacy infrastructure, and do not have the ability to invest a lot, as well as are not sure about what's the return of investments if they incur a lot of costs. There are a number of buyers who are looking for good talent and face talent shortages and hiring issues. in their internal organization. And I think the overall cost pressure still remains one of those challenges that buyers are facing. And so in the face of such challenges, there are different things, that different value propositions that they seek from a buyer. And these are from multiple perspectives. First one is obviously about talent and how they can bring in that industry knowledge, skilled talent in place, as well as skill management structure in place, who knows their industry, can support well, map out the customer journey and understand what are the pain points and which are the areas in which they can support better. Cost is obviously one of those in which they expect the providers to come in, lower the cost, or maybe help them controlling cost in a long term, in a gradual manner. And the final one is about digital solutions. What are the different solutions that they can bring to the table? What are the chatbots, automation, or analytics kind of solutions that they can help implementing, as well as supporting in the longer run, so that they can have their true omni-channel capabilities in place. And so this has led to a shift in providers' perspective as well, and the kind of investments that providers are doing, which we will see in the next slide. Previously, we had seen a number of providers investing in their in-house capabilities as well as a partnerships, which still is valid, and a lot of providers are still investing in in-house solutions. But the focus has gradually shifted towards more and more of partnerships, in which technology providers are coming to the market, having a big say, bringing in the best of breed solutions, and a lot of times partnering with different providers, not just for reselling, but also having a joint implementation or joint solutions in place, which is specifically customized for a certain set of clients, or maybe some of the clients from a different industry. So we have seen investments in partnerships across the board, and maybe in terms of cloud, automation, virtual agents, as well as agent assist, and different industry specific solutions, which will be out of the box and modular for a client in a particular industry. And this will shape the future of partnerships, obviously. And David, I'll hand it over to you for the next slide.
Thanks, Chandak. Yeah, and as we start to wrap up, then we'll get into some questions. So what we're seeing is actually there is going to be a lot of focus as we think about the future in terms of partnerships, and the partnerships are going to be on multiple levels. So first of all, you go back to what Chandak was just saying. It's going to be around the technology innovation, and it's thinking about, and we do know that service providers are engaging with technology providers to co-develop solutions and tools, and actually that's in the interest of the buyer, so the end customer. Because actually what we're looking to do is, how do you deliver a solution that might be very specific to a vertical, or actually means you don't have to rip and replace. If you start making complete bespoke solutions, there's a lot of rip and replace. So how can you build an ecosystem that has the service provider leveraging the best in class technology out there to deliver solutions quickly to a customer, to their customer, to ultimately deliver great CX to the end customer. So a lot of focus around technology innovation, using best in class solutions to deliver right solutions to the customers quickly. The second one is around the service delivery network. So thinking about building and forging partnerships, to tapping into local talent pools across the globe, thinking about how you spread the delivery footprint, reduces the risk, makes the most of the talent. If you go back to what we were saying very early on, the talent demands are going to have to change as we move forward. Yes, we may need less people in the future as digital takes some of the volumes that we're handling, but actually the skills that the people are going to have may be different. They're going to have to be higher levels of empathy, different levels of problem solving than maybe they have today. So where do you get this talent from? So thinking about the right delivery networks, the sources of talent, the locations of talent as well. So that's the second layer of partnership. And then lastly, and it is something that we've seen a lot more focus on in the last few years, is around sustainable development. So we know that enterprises and providers are starting to take much more seriously about how does this contribute to our ESG agenda or our CSR agenda, or whatever each company is calling it. But we know that actually, if you look back probably 5-7 years ago, RFPs were put out there in the market for buying CX services, and elements of ESG were in there, but they may only have been 1%, 2%, 3% weighting of the overall score given against that RFP. We now know that RFPs are seeing 10, 15, 20% weightings for some of the ESG elements within that RFP, because actually people are realizing that it not only is a tick box, which maybe it was many years ago, well, actually that is the future and the thing that they're trying to do as an organization. And they're looking to live their values now even through their outsourcing. So we're doing a lot of coverage right now around impact sourcing. And impact sourcing, if you're not aware, is where you're actually looking to hire people from underserved communities and bring them into the workforce. And that doesn't just have to be in Africa or in India, but it can be onshore in the US, it can be onshore in the UK. Impact sourcing is covering all sorts of different types of people with different levels of being underserved in the past, disabilities, etc., etc. So it's such a broad topic, but impact sourcing is a really important factor that we see as a great way of delivering great levels customer experience services, but also driving the good for the communities that these service providers and enterprises are based in. Also around things such as diversity, so diversity inclusion, and then sustainability as well in terms of the environment and how you drive to net zero. All of these things are now being much more factored into buying decisions. So as a buyer, you need to be thinking about that and how your outsourcing decisions are impacting your company's ESG goals. And then as a service provider, how are you going to help buyers to meet their company ESG goals through the solutions that you bring? So bringing all these things together, but a lot of focus much more around partnerships and bringing them together into a solution that end customers are really going to benefit from. So that was the content that we wanted to cover today. We hope we've given you a good sense in terms of some of the key strategies that you could be deploying if you're a buyer, or some of the key strategies you could be thinking about if you're a service provider, and vice versa, as you know maybe what others are thinking. So we've got about 5 minutes left, so I would love to take some questions, and I'll start with the very first question that we got actually. So from TJ, and Chandak, I'll throw it to you, but I'm happy to jump in as well. But we're talking, this was quite early on, and the question was, how in deals, how can service providers offer flexibility to their customers, knowing that customer is not great at forecasting? And how is this being solved between the service provider and the customer? So do you have any view as to, I mean, what are we seeing in the market around that flexibility that could be built in?
Yeah, I think that's a very valid question, David. And a lot of forecasts is being done by the enterprises in which a service provider is not very responsible for, but they are responsible for providing the requisite or the required number of agents to their clients. So I think there are two ways in which flexibility can be achieved in this one. First one would be having a collaborative approach in which as a service provider should be feeding in what are the kind of volumes that they're witnessing. Are there any deviations from the traditional data that they have in place through which the forecasting is being done? Or can the provider make the forecasting process more efficient for their client? So it's not just about what the client is dictating, but it's also about what are the feedbacks and what are the actions that a provider can take collaboratively with the with their client. The second one is from a provider perspective, it should be flexibility to move agents or having that bench strength in place. To quickly deploy for any peaks that are coming in, or any requirement across industries, and having that kind of multi-skilled agents to move between industries and between clients and leveraging them in the critical scenarios that are required. So any views from you, David?
Yeah, the only I think I would add is where we're seeing service providers stepping up actually is also in commercial flexibility. So not tying in companies, and we've seen this especially in some of the really fast growth companies, where what we know is that they're forecasting massive growth, but they're not convinced, or it's not certain that they will see that massive growth. And what we're seeing is service providers, especially some of those with specific offerings to this sort of small, fast growth, hyper growth companies, is a lot more flexibility in the commercial model. So if you grow to this is what the commercial model will look like. So not locking them in maybe to sort of 12, 24, 36 month deals, or having flexibility on if their volumes drop, they don't have to pay for so much if those agents can be redeployed. So a lot of commercial flexibility, I think, is needed if you're really going to adapt to some of these fast growth companies as well. So that would be the other thing I would say, is that commercial flexibility. We have another question from Graham, asking, are we seeing more industry specific services being developed by service providers to sync all of those safeguarding factors with specific customer journey maps, automation preferences, seasonal needs, etc.? I'll take a stab at this if you want, Chandak, and then you can jump in.
Yeah.
I think, yes, we are definitely seeing service providers are focusing on some industry specific areas. I think there's a core competence in terms of managing agents, the functional management of the contact center, but then they are overlaying that with, for certain industries, it doesn't need to be an industry specific need. If there's an element of, I know, financial regulations, whether it's vulnerable customers, whatever it is, there are focuses from service providers on where's the industry nuance that we need to be factoring into our solution, and they're designing solutions for that, both the human-led solution, so putting people on it, but also the digital solutions as well, and how you lay over an industry vertical nuance if it's needed, whether it's for regulatory compliance or whether it's because that's the type of industry that you're in. But Chano, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
Yeah, the only thing that I can add to that, David, is obviously you have spoken about how to have that industry specific mindset in place. But the other thing is cross leveraging those best practices across industries, not just restricting yourself to a certain industry and the way of working of clients in those industry, but also bringing in the required intelligence from different industries, which might be relevant for a certain client. So for example, a certain set of processes from an BFSI industry might be helpful for a healthcare client as well, given both are very regulated. So cross leveraging those international experience maybe, or maybe experience from different client base is very important, and how those things are ingrained in the culture in which different teams do not work in silos but talk to each other and provide services in the best possible manner.
Brilliant. Thanks, Anna. So I'm conscious we've got literally 1 minute, and I want to wrap this up on time as we've promised. So there are a few questions we haven't answered. I do know a few of the people that have asked the questions, so I will come back to you directly. But if we will also have captured all the questions, and so we will follow up on any questions that we haven't answered. And then if you want a more detailed conversation once we come back to you, then we're happy to jump on a call and talk you through it. But thank you very much. Hopefully you found it useful. I think on the screen now, you'll see lots of information, some of the blogs that we've done in the past, some of the content that we've got. Please take a look at our website. There's a lot of content in there, related content you'll see on the screen now. So we're focusing and we're producing content on this area all the time. So please take a look and let us know if there's anything that we can do to help you. Our contact details are all on that slide. So again, thank you for your time today. Hopefully you found it useful. Please feel free to reach out via directly or through LinkedIn if you've got any questions.